Hello and welcome to another podcast, a video podcast, no less. We're back in person. Fund Your Passion podcast brought to you by JBR Capital. Joining me, of course, is my trusty sidekick.
Hello, how are you?
Darren. I'm hoarse.
You are very hoarse. What a pair we are today that we've hobbled our way over to the Shmuseum.
Welcome.
Oh, are we welcoming you or are you welcoming us? We're here in your Shmuseum.
I suppose both ways around, right?
Tim, thank you very much for hosting us today.
Pleasure.
Okay, let's start. The obvious question, Shmuseum. Tell us about the idea, the thinking behind it. Just tell us the story.
I guess this was something I was actually planning for a very long time, trying to find the right location, both to store my growing car collection, but also as a venue to shoot videos, to create content, to have a space, to have the opportunity to expand what I've been doing with Shmee150. And then here we are in the early stages still, but it's exciting.
Early stages. Obviously, you've got big plans. At the moment, it just looks like a barn. But we're going to come on to the plans and what you've got in mind for it later on. Obviously, it's lovely to see all the cars here. Is this everything or is there more hiding?
There are a couple currently missing. Most things are here. I've done my best to try and bring all the cars down today and to get everything here, but a couple are out because I think it's pretty much the norm when you have a collection of cars that you use as much as we do with everything here. Something is always out, being fixed, being serviced at an event somewhere or just on display. There are always some cars that are missing. I have one car over in the USA at the moment, and then a couple dotted around some garages here and there.
Okay, so you are, certainly to my mind, the person who sort of defined what it means to be an influencer around cars. You are, to my mind, you kicked it all off. Do you see it that way?
Well, it's...
How did it all start? And just let's also talk about Shmee. What's Shmee?
So this is the funny thing, right? This all started for me a long time ago. I was posting pictures online back in around 2007, 2008, and I moved into videos on YouTube in 2010. And at the time, people wouldn't really have known what YouTube was. It wasn't a thing. Social media wasn't a thing. This is one of the craziest things for me is I've been uploading videos basically daily since before platforms like Instagram or Snapchat even existed. And that's one of the kind of strange concepts by how quickly all of this has grown. And certainly the term an influencer or a YouTuber didn't exist. So Shmee was just my personal online nickname, my gamer name, my website, username for different things. And it was where I happened to upload videos of what I loved, which was cars, going to events like the Geneva Motor Show or the Goodwood Festival of Speed, or stuff I would see around London, for example, just going for a walk. I lived near South Kensington where all of the nice cars would often be spotted. And just uploaded, videos. And at the time, it was a very small community. There were a couple of other channels I was watching, and I thought it was so cool. People had 100 subscribers or 500 subscribers or something like this. And I thought it was so exciting. And you got to meet, obviously digitally, virtually, people who shared the same passion. So that was one of the biggest drivers for me, was that people would comment on my stuff who loved the same thing that I loved. And, this car spotting community grew from there.
So back in the day, I remember, because I did see some of them, you were literally on your bike chasing cars down the road like a mad person with a camera in one hand, trying not to fall off in the other.
I'm not sure I would.
How did that work? And I'm assuming other people were doing it or started doing it. And was there like a little community that
There
formed?
was. Nowadays, obviously, every mobile phone has a camera. Back then, the camera on your mobile phone was not good enough to do this. It was very much for me at the beginning that I had a point and shoot camera, and then I had been playing around with tape camcorders and then ripping the tape to my computer. It was, a different game to what it is now. But like you said, there were a couple of people going out and we would meet up on a Saturday afternoon. And, it was almost like a social activity to go out and go see what we could find. And then there was just this excitement, like you said, I would be on my pedal bike running, blasting around town.
How old were you at this point?
So I guess when I'm starting, I would have been in my young 20s, 21, 22 at that point.
Okay.
And it was just, I don't know, I guess it was an odd thing to be doing, but it was so much fun. And you could get from traffic light to traffic light quicker on a bicycle than any car could. So if you're chasing a Ferrari Enzo down the road, you follow it the whole way through town because the bike's the quickest way around.
And did you have a day job while you were doing
I did have a day job. I worked in an office in the city. So this was a weekends and evenings activity.
So Tim, we're in the fabulous Shmuseum and you're Shmee. I'm not quite sure what that makes me, but anyway. So where did Shmee come from, the name? Is there a history to that?
Well, this is the thing, right? It was never planned. This wasn't, let's say, a business I drew up a business plan for and said, yes, this is going to work. It was very much transitioning my online presence into creating content specifically for the purpose. So it's quite a funny story. Shmee was just a nickname I made up once for a website. And the 150 on the name came because once upon a time, Shmee was already taken and it offered me Shmee0000, Shmee 98765, or Shmee150, which was the shortest. So I just clicked it and done. And from that point on, it was set. Obviously, Shmuseum is a bit of a play. We have a few funny terms you could say like this: the Shmee-mobiles, we do Shmeetings, which are the meetups. The Shmuseum is the Shmee Museum. It's very
You couldn't have
cliche.
planned it any better.
No, it's just a bit of fun.
You do some schmoozing.
Boom. Okay.
Terrible, but anyway, what can I say?
So obviously you started off with this sort of niche, if you like, following, but it has grown. It's gone bananas. I mean, now you must find that you're recognised probably in places that you never expected to be recognised.
Yeah, that is one of the craziest things to me, is that obviously it's a very global platform, being on social media, and especially cars. It speaks through every different language barrier, every different cultural barrier. Loads of people around the world obviously share this passion. And that's one of the most, I think, fascinating and things that I feel so excited and a position I'm lucky to be in, that wherever I go around the world, I can probably meet somebody who is in the same mindset. I think it's, obviously from being recognized places, it's funny still to me when like somebody in my own building where I live or something like that says hello, and so like, oh, can you hide anywhere? But I know I'm not complaining about it, because it's a really cool thing the way this has kind of evolved.
You never expected it in the beginning.
No, and this goes back, I think, again to, if somebody starts on social media now, there's an understanding of where it can go and what it can become. But obviously I've kind of been riding that wave the whole way through and learning as we go, because there was nothing to look at or nothing to take an example from.
Were there ever times, because as you say, social media and the platforms that you can broadcast on have just exploded, were there ever times where you thought, oh, okay, I'm not sure, am I oversharing? Where does that line?
Yeah, it's really hard, because where you obviously have to find this balance, and there are lots of different channels who go about things in different ways. We always almost consider it a bit like you either have a relationship type channel with your audience, or you have an ideas based channel. And we're planning our content more towards the idea. So every video focuses around a particular activity or an event or a new car or something that's almost a bit more standalone, as opposed to the daily vlogging where you would film your breakfast and your whole family and that kind of thing. So it's one of the things that's actually really, I think, helped keep me, let's say, a little bit more sane going through it all, is by having this split between what's Shmee and what's Tim, which certainly helps a lot.
So you started out as a hobby. You had a day job in the city somewhere, doing something, I don't know, boring, like me.
Working in banking.
Oh, there you go.
In the financial
I used to do
industry.
that as well. And so where was the tipping point where you thought, oh, this is quite cool, I could actually earn an income out of this, and and then take that plunge to make the move?
So in the early days, and this is one of the things a lot of people don't realize now, but back in 2010, for example, you didn't earn any money uploading a video to YouTube. That was not a thing. No. This has all happened since. So it was all very much passion-led at the beginning. But I think in late 2010, maybe 2011, that came in, and I remember getting my first month and it was like £1.60, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. Wasn't going to make me leave my job for that, but it built up a little bit, and it got to a point after a couple of years, maybe 3 years or so, not where it was going to be paying off my monthlies on a nice car or something like that, but it was a little bit of money, and I was thinking, hey, maybe if I go at this more full on, there would be possible to do something. And I was super lucky that I worked in a very small company, a boutique firm, and had a good relationship with the co-CEOs, and they made it possible effectively for me to go from a full-time salary to a 4-day, 3-day, and open up a bit more time to do this as well. And obviously without them, I wouldn't have been able to make that leap, because I wouldn't have been able, I don't think I would have been mad enough at the time to say, yes, I'm giving up my job to go fully on for this. And then eventually, it started building up a bit more. And I said to myself, if I'm ever going to give it a go, now's the time. it was a difficult year after that, I'm not going to lie, because things had kind of peaked and then fell off a little bit afterwards, but I was persistent and kept going, and thankfully all kind of turned around and started
Well, I think
flying.
you're kind of onto something. I mean, how many YouTube followers do you have now? It's
a big
ridiculous
old number now. Yeah, I think it's about 2.3 million subscribers on YouTube, plus a similar number on Facebook and Instagram. So it's taken off a bit.
You must have pinched yourself, but obviously with that many subscribers and followers, there is a expectation and a desire for you to keep pushing out more and more content. How, I mean, you've talked about that being ideas-based now, rather than, what was the other?
Relationship. More the kind of daily vlogging.
So how do you come up with that, and how do you finance it? Because of course, once you've done a video on one of the cars, how do you plan it? Because obviously you're not going to get rid of them. What you might, but
some do. No, so it's from the outset, obviously, I'm lucky to be working in an industry where there are constantly new things coming along.
Yep.
There are always new cars. It's been a slower year as manufacturers have backed off the pace a little bit, but in general terms, there are always new cars coming along. So that almost opens up the opportunity to, I'm not going to say completely redo something you've already done, but there are lots of new cars to try, to test drive, to feature content around, and new storylines to build up as well. I think in total I've made approximately 5,000 YouTube videos now. So there's a lot of stuff I've done that I can't even remember that I've done. It's quite serious. Sometimes I look at a video from kind of 5 years ago that I shot and I'm like, wow, I completely forgot I did that.
You need to give me a bit of training. I'm still on the photographing what I've had for breakfast part and posting those. I haven't moved on.
But no, obviously one of the fundamental niches for me has always been our tagline, which is living the supercar dream and sharing the whole experience around cars, such as the main cars in the garage here. And that almost runs right through from the first time seeing a new model to the first time getting to drive it, to going through the specification, to going through the delivery, taking it for the first time on a road trip, first track day, laps of the Nürburgring, modifying the car, whatever it might be down the line, and almost building those storylines and bringing the audience along for the journey.
But are you slightly surprised that people are interested in that much detail?
I think,
or did it surprise you in the beginning?
No, well, I understand it because it's what I wanted to watch, and it wasn't out there. So it was what I was fascinated to watch that I couldn't really see. I now really enjoy sharing because, I meet so many people along the way, and this is one of the crazy things. I meet so many people who are inspired by what they've seen, or enjoy both the entertainment and the information side of this kind of content. And I think it's one of the most rewarding things is knowing that other people really enjoy what you're doing and pushes you forward with doing it. But
So you're living the supercar dream. That's your tagline, so to speak. And clearly you are living the supercar dream. Is that what inspired you to move from chasing cars down the road to actually buying and owning your own collection, so to speak? Because you can still produce content without actually owning, I'm not even going to count, but a lot of cars.
It's been an evolutionary process for me. I think going through time, social media has changed in terms of how much of what type of content is out there. At the start, I was one of the only people who was car spotting. I then became one of the only people who was going initially to the early test drives with manufacturers. I was building those relationships at motor shows and at events with the PR representatives, for example, from car companies to go on the global media launches, and feeling very lost at the time. And I was sitting there with the array of journalists who I was reading and following and wondering what on earth I was doing. But somehow that all became possible. And, that then has grown a lot. So I became much more about sharing a bit more of the ownership experience and the road trip experience with different cars. And now that's become much more covered, let's say, in the industry, and now it's more about managing and maintaining a car collection. So it's something that's grown. But I think this is the interesting connection to what you were saying when it comes to cars, for example. Obviously for me, being able to finance a car can be part of, let's say, that car's almost, it's strange to say it, but business plan, because it's part of what could I purchase, what would be interesting, what storyline would we make around this, what do the audience want to see. So it might become that long term everything hangs around because I'm a bit of a hoarder and don't want to let anything go. But
presumably everything that you've decided to buy for a reason.
Yeah, so it's a really difficult one, because if you were playing, let's say, purely for the clicks, you would be Lamborghini, 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 throw in the occasional Ferrari or Porsche. because that's how the internet works. So I've not ever played it completely like that.
There isn't a Ferrari.
Not at the moment. Soon, very soon. I've recently said farewell to one, but have one or maybe more than one coming.
Oh, okay.
Little teaser there.
Newsflash.
Yeah. But for me, it's, I was always a big McLaren fan as they've been growing and coming up through the ranks. I've owned a number of different McLarens. And I really like brands who cover, let's say, the entire spectrum, which is a personal thing, but also a content and audience type thing. For example, Mercedes and Ford are the two brands from whom I own the most cars, because you have everything with Ford, from a hot hatch to a muscle car to the GT supercar. Same with Mercedes. They make pickup trucks, G-Wagons, but also the AMG 1 hypercar. And I think it's, there's so much more connection with a brand like that because it's more relatable on so many levels, which has always obviously played through on the content as well as being my personal interest. So it's kind of led from both sides. Depends what I'm.
And I guess with that mind to evolution, it's easy to then find more ideas for content, because you're not just sticking to one channel or one idea and just making a new video.
Exactly. It's always a bit of an experiment. You need to not be afraid to try things. Mm-hmm. So for example, the Shmuseum now has its own channel that comes along with it. And this was one of the things I wanted to do, to make it much more of the relationship daily vlog. So the content that we create here is much more about what's going on with the garage. Even if it's something simple as a car has a leak or needs an MOT, annual roadworthiness check, or whatever it might be, that's the thing that a lot of people around the world wouldn't really know about, and a lot of people are interested in.
Because it's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very easy to look around and say, this looks amazing. But if you think about it, with a garage of 18 odd cars or something, that's pretty much like 2 a month going out for something, or maybe more. And that's before I take everything on trips and something inevitably happens and whatever needs to be done with it.
Okay, I've got a question for you, and I've been thinking about this since the minute I arrived. Which one of these cars could you fit 2 Rhodesian Ridgeback dogs into? Because Amanda
G-Wagon?
has 2 dogs, and she's desperately trying to find a car to fit them into.
I have 2 dogs. I now no longer need to drive my children around, so I don't need a big SUV. I'm trying to downsize, but I still need to carry my dogs.
A smaller car to fit dogs in?
Yeah, but they're big dogs.
Smaller dogs? I said downgrade the dogs,
they're big
but
dogs.
that wasn't going to work.
Downgrade the dogs.
Every time we have this conversation, we talk about can I get my dogs in the back?
So it's not a problem I've ever tried to.
If you have any good ideas, do let me know, because I'm trying to. I'd like to go smaller.
You need like a hatch or something that isn't an extended thing, something like a Defender 90 or something like that, or
it's just
still too big.
I'd like to go small. Anyway, we digress. We will come.
You could get a little hatchback and take out the rear seats.
Yeah, we still haven't resolved this long burning issue. Anyway,
yeah, I'm still waiting for somebody to come up with a solution for me. But anyway, so if you weren't doing this, what do you think your life would have been like?
I think I probably had my life much more or less mapped out before, which would have been staying in my office job and progressing through a career path and business as usual, I guess we could say. And this was a bit of a curveball. This was not.
So you'd have just stayed in banking.
I presume so.
Yeah.
It's impossible to know, right? I've always been a person who's kind of taken chances, we could say, and just gone out and tried things. Like when I've always been trading things online. I was selling a lot of things on eBay as a 14-year-old, for example.
I'm amazed, given the amount of storage and hoarding.
Yeah, and
you sold anything?
Yeah, sold a lot of things, thankfully. Well, when I was 19, I actually then opened a shop in London to sell electronics that I was importing. And then a few months later, I sold up that business and went and became a ski instructor for a bit, and then came back and worked in the city. So I've literally, I just decide spontaneously it's time for something new and throw my whole life on its head.
So let's face it, when you came home and told your family,
I'm leaving my job
I'm
to
leaving
go
my
make
job
YouTube
in the
videos.
city to make videos on cars.
But you see, this would be odd.
They probably thought that was quite normal.
Well, normal kind of response from me, but this would be odd now. Put yourself back in 2013.
Yeah.
That concept was completely kind of alien. People were like, well, what do you do? How does that work? How do you make any money doing this?
The first time I heard the expression influencer,
Yeah.
thinking, what
is that?
earth is that? What does that mean?
And it's such a strange one because, I see obviously every side of the term, and, people, I see a lot of, let's say derogatory comments of, what's the point in this? What can it possibly mean? But I found out the other day that, so I have a tendency of changing the color of my cars and respraying them and this kind of thing. And one I had done was is my SLS Black Series, which I painted in a specific blue and put silver wheels on it, which was a controversial move for a car like that to not be in a factory spec. And I just found out the other day that somebody in Brazil has done exactly the same to theirs.
Really?
They literally copied the specification of mine, which I think is really, really cool. But it goes to show you that that's a limited edition car worth £500,000 or so, and somebody's painted it to match the same as the one they've seen on the internet.
So what do manufacturers make of that?
Well, I think I have a very close relationship with a lot of manufacturers because, everybody watches social media, watches content, whether it's somebody, whether it's a youngster who's dreaming one day of owning a Ferrari or something, or literally whether it's somebody choosing the specification for the next Bugatti. They're probably watching videos about it. And I have a lot of this relationship with clients of these cars around the world, and I do a lot of things both with manufacturers now and with private collectors. And that was a big inspiration to this because of how many different collectors I've visited over the years. And the manufacturers directly see that if I shoot a video around one of their new cars, customers will watch the video, and then customers will reach out to the manufacturers saying, I've seen this video, how does this work? And I've seen that spec option or this, that, and the other. So I get that feedback, very much firsthand.
But even when you're going against, as you say, a limited edition car, you're going against what would be a factory option.
True.
Do they ever?
Well, the
sort of
the GT Black Series, the very bright yellow one, is a great example of this because in some markets, for some VIPs, they would paint the cars in one-off colours, but UK cars not possible. Somebody in my position, not possible. And I had the dream that I wanted that car in that particular colour, and it was a funny conversation. I was begging and pleading with AMG, please can we do it? Please can we do this in solar beam yellow? And the long story short was, but if we do it for you, we have to do it for everyone. Okay, I get that. So I'll go and do it myself, but please don't do it yourself because it doesn't look good that we wouldn't do it. And it kind of went round
in circles.
Yes, and I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to do it because at the end of the day, for me, I'm acquiring the cars that I want to use, right? To be able to go through that whole story and to be able to make it personal. And a car like that, I'm going to take hopefully around the world and do a load of content.
I'm going to make a prediction here, and you heard it here first from me. I predict sometime in the next few years, a manufacturer will do a Shmee150 limited edition.
Oh,
could be.
Could be.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I think you have the brand and following that would make a manufacturer want to do that. Why not?
totally. Well, it
Why
makes
not?
sense.
It's really interesting. We obviously talk at our end, and I have a whole team that works with me with Shmee150. It's not just a one-person effort. It's a series of employees and
I thought of
management.
you just sitting in a room with screens. And
Well, a lot of people do because this is in so many ways how we create the content, right? But while we're sitting here, somebody's editing a video, somebody's planning the next video, somebody's having the meetings about the things that are further down the line. And it makes my life easier because I just turn a camera on and move on.
You've got that nailed.
It still makes for long days. I'm not going to pretend it's super easy. But it's so much more of a, what am I trying to say, like this whole kind of team set up to make everything happen that everybody doesn't necessarily realize.
Going back to the relationship with manufacturers, obviously in the very beginning, you said you were going to sort of press launches of cars, sitting there amongst a bunch of journalists, old school print journalists. The reviews would come out in 2 months, 3 months' time.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with the manufacturers developed over that time, and also with some of those traditional media outlets?
So it's actually a really interesting space because I think I can say that I was the first person in the social media influencer space to go on automotive media launches, kind of full stop. And that was because my lead business manager, who's worked with me pretty much for a decade now, came from more of a journalistic background. So although in technology and mobile phones, for example, but in the way that he knew how to approach people and how to explain what value we could bring to the manufacturer to effectively have the opportunity to go on these launches. And it was very interesting, let's say 7 or 8 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, on press launches, how they were so set up, obviously, for written media. You had a full schedule followed by a 3-course dinner, followed by by this, which is lovely. The hospitality is great, but if you need to do a stop and stand up film clip and you need to edit a video, there isn't exactly any time for that.
No.
So those have evolved significantly, and most main cars launching now will have social media rotations. They'll have, let's say, a day for automotive social media, followed by a day for multiple different fields from the influencer space attending. And obviously, in the early days, when I'm sitting there with the likes of Steve Sutcliffe and Chris Harris and Andrew Frankel and people I've been reading for years, and I'm kind of starstruck at that stage by who am I sitting around? How is this possible? And not really knowing what to say. And I think everyone's looking at me like, who's this guy? And what's he doing? And why is he holding a camera in his hand? Because anybody who was doing video at that time had a cameraman with a full crew. It wasn't, the hold your hand out with a camera on the end of it. But what's been, I guess, difficult for me is how that's actually evolved since, because it has become very competitive. Obviously, in recent years, magazines and traditional media have been declining and social media has been growing, and you feel that tension, which bothers me, because obviously that's what I follow. I read my Evos and Autocars and follow that news and always have, and I guess always will. But there have certainly been times recently where the industries have got quite cagey with one another. Yeah, which is difficult.
And also, there's just so many more influencers out there.
And it's getting more and more niche. Not many years ago, you would have a person who covers everything, like myself. Now you'll have influencers who work only with one brand, with everybody. If you look at people who cover just Mercedes or just Porsche or just BMW, there's a long list for each now. And that's something that's changed and changing very fast. It's often referred to as the micro-influencer, people who have a smaller following but a more dedicated following. Sure. And that's a direction that's really picking up at the moment.
That's where I think you need to go.
Do you think so?
Yeah, micro-influence.
Very, very micro. Very niche.
Stick to what Darren had for breakfast.
I think it's just
talking breakfast, any plans to open a Shmee restaurant?
What could we call that?
I don't know.
Not currently,
no.
but you never know.
It seems to be a trend in the automotive industry. Lots of dealerships opening restaurants. You've got the engine rooms at Hexagon Classics. I don't know if you've tried it out, but
I haven't been yet.
Pretty good.
I think one of the interesting things for me is the transition from here. As quickly as social media has arisen, I don't know how long it's going to be around for, but I've got involved more recently, and this is one of the reasons for growing out my own Shmee150 team, is to give myself a little bit more time. And I've got involved in more other businesses and small projects and things that might kick off and might become the next thing. But through people I've met, but also with the contacts that I know in this world now, to help grow those different things.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because one of the most fascinating, rewarding things I found coming at the industry from the finance angle is the people, our customers, and the people that I've met over the last 20 years. And I spent time with people that I possibly would have had no other reason to be in front of or have the privilege of being with, and being invited to their houses, seeing their cars, and they love to talk about their cars. It's just something they're so passionate about, and they can be billionaires and it makes no difference, or they could be just an enthusiast who's got a smaller collection. But that has been the fascinating things. But I've seen some amazing garages, but not quite as amazing as potentially the ones you've seen. So I think my question would be, what's the most amazing garage that you've had the privilege to step inside of?
I've certainly been lucky to see some things I can't talk about. It gets to that level. No, I completely agree with you. And it's what I said earlier. One of the things that I appreciate the most out of what I do is how the automotive industry is such a positive industry. People are generally working in this world because they love the subject, and it brings you together instantly with anybody from any walk of life, anywhere. And it's one of the things that I always feel the most, I guess, lucky position to be in, is that if I go pretty much anywhere, it doesn't even have to just be the cliche spots of London, Monaco, or Los Angeles, or Dubai, or something, but literally anywhere there's somebody to meet to talk cars.
Because you don't even need to own the cars, do you? You just need to appreciate and enjoy them.
I've always found whatever barriers existed or could have existed, they're gone.
They're gone completely.
They're just completely gone. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's things like, I think one of the best examples is probably Leno and his position. You meet him, he'll talk to anybody who likes cars, because it's his passion.
Yeah.
And that brings down any boundary that you have between different people. And I think that's one of the things for me as well. You know, I love if I've parked up somewhere, or if I'm at a petrol station and somebody wants to talk about cars, you end up being there far longer than you had ever planned.
You're at petrol stations far longer than you plan these days
Yes,
anyway.
yes, that's true, unless you're driving an electric car.
That's very true. So what's next? Obviously, Shmuseum is in its infancy, but there are big plans.
There are some very big plans. One of the things about this space is, and a lot of people said, you know, it's just a barn on a farm. Yes, it is just a barn on a farm. Obviously, a lot of work had to go into even having a floor, lighting, security, and all of this stuff. But it's about bringing the audience on the journey.
Yeah.
When has anybody ever covered the transition of a barn into a 20, 30 car garage? And that's what I want to bring the audience along, because that's something I've been fascinated by for recent years, visiting. You know, I've been to incredible collections filled with dream cars everywhere from, you know, Tokyo to Toronto. And it's something that I've got so many ideas about from all the places that I've filmed myself and been trying to formulate. So we're going to be putting up a nice office, bringing in a theme to the garage and doing all of this, but bringing the audience along that journey as well. So they'll see what it looks like now, and they'll see what it looks like in a year's time, which will be completely different.
We just have to talk very quickly about track.
Yes.
Because we were sort of, just before we started filming this, we were talking about motorsport and whether or not you're going to follow some of the other guys into a sort of more motorsport. Now, obviously, you take a lot of these cars out on track, but my question was, there's track driving and there's motorsport where you lose wing mirrors and bang wings and stuff like that. Are we ever going to see you doing that sort of thing?
I mean, I've done a little bit of racing. I have a race license, and I did some races with the Mini Challenge and with the Audi TT Cup, which were both like fantastic fun. And I've done some outings with the Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo and 911 Cup car as well, and had a bit of a taster and you know what's involved. I obviously tend to head towards the road legal equivalents, let's say, which will never offer quite the same performance or quite the same involvement, but are in so many more ways more relatable to the audience, which is one of the reasons why I go down that path. It's more relatable to take a road car on a racetrack than a race car on a racetrack for some reason.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, a trend that my colleagues in the social media industry all see the same with. I very much would like to do more racing, and you know, this venue will be themed along the motorsports lines. But it's something I feel like I'm almost saving a little bit until I've got a bit more time to do it. You know, attending a racing weekend knocks it out of you, right? And it's a lot of work. You know, don't get me wrong, I go to a lot of different races, from the N24 to the 24 Hours of Le Mans to various Formula One events, so I spend a lot of time around the racing world. But it's more like to have that 4-day weekend, traveling somewhere, going through the practice, getting set up and everything. And the budgets, obviously, another relevant topic. You know, if you want to jump in at the deep end running a Ferrari Challenge car,
it's deep.
Yes, it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment, and it's, you know, it's not like, yes, okay, the car has a value, but the commitment to the entry fees and whatnot is not like buying a road car, where it will generally keep a large chunk of its value over time. So I guess I'm just waiting for the right stage, the right time to do more.
We won't say never. We won't write that off the Shmee150 channel.
Yeah, there will certainly be some more racing in future. It's just a case of what and when. And, you know, I quite fancy the Ferrari Challenge series, so maybe that will be the one when the time is right to do so.
Well, Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure and fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you, Tim, once again.
Thank you for coming down.
So, from Darren, Tim, and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.